We continue now at the top of Daf Chav Tesam Beis Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 29b. This daf is sponsored by David and Ariella Grossman. Thank you for your sponsorship. If you would like to sponsor an Amud or a daf, see the description box below, and see the description box below to see how you can support this channel. On the previous Amud, the Gemara brought the opinion of Ben Azai in a Braisa. Again, we were darshaning the pasuk in Sefer Vayikra, Perek Zayin, pasuk Yurches. The full pasuk is Vim Heachol Yachel Mivsar Zevach Shlomav Bayom Hashlishi Lo Yeirotze. And again, we interpreted that pasuk as talking about the Kohen has a machshav, an intention that he's going to that the carbon will be consumed chutz lizmano, outside of the proper time. The pasuk is not talking about the actual consumption of the carbon after the proper time. It's talking about the intention. So the pasuk says hamakrivoso lo yichashav lo pigul yiyah. The pasuk says that the carbon will not be accepted. It's pigul va'nefesh hochelos mimenu avonatisa, and it says the soul who eats from it is going to carry the burden of that sin. And again, Ben Azai said in the previous summit that we learned from the pasuk when it says "oso" that it's only over here by a situation of pigul that we say that the carbon is not accepted. However, let's say a person would bring a carbon late, he'd have a neder, and he would delay in bringing and fulfilling that obligation. He would bring it late. One might have thought that that carbon is not accepted, but it is accepted. Oso, only in this case by pigul it's not accepted. But if somebody is late in bringing the carbon, then the carbon is accepted. And the Gemara asked in the previous summit, does Ben Azai really learn that from the pasuk of Oso? But we should learn it from the following source. And the Gemara brings a brisa, the opinion of the Acherim, talking about a bechor which is past 1 year old, and the brisa continues and says one might think that such a bechor is kipsule hamukdashin, it's like disqualified kodshim. Rashi explains kipsule hamukdashin ki'ilu nafal bomum, maybe it's as if it has a blemish, it's over 1 year old. V'yipasel, maybe one would think it's disqualified. Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says v'yachalta l'fnei Hashem elokecha masar degoncha, and in this pasuk there's a comparison between bechor and meiser. Makish bechor lemeiser, we compare bechor, the animal that's the firstborn, to meiser. Meiser eno nifsal mishana lechaverta, just like meiser does not become disqualified from 1 year to the next. So af bechor eno nifsal mishana lechaverta, so to a bechor does not become possible from 1 year to the next. And so we see from this pasuk that if there is a delay, in this case by bechor, that's not a disqualification from accepting the carbon. And the Gemara continues and answers, no, it's necessary to have two sources. Even though we have a source by Bechor, we need to have a source by other karbonos. Because Sal Kadayt Chamina, one might have thought, Hani Mili Bechor, maybe that's only true by Bechor that it's accepted. The Lav Bar Hartzahu, because a Bechor is not brought as an atonement. Aval Kachim Devnei Hartzah Ninu, but other karbonos that are brought as atonement, so Emalo Lirtzu, maybe they won't be accepted if they are delayed. And so Kamash Malon, that's why Ben Azai needs the pasuk of Oso to teach that those karbonos as well are accepted. And Rashi explains, Ma Meiser eno nifsal mishana lechaverta, just like Meiser is not disqualified from 1 year to the next, Shahari b'shlishi is man biur, because you wait till the third year, that's the time of the biur of the Meiseros, levayer, kol ha-Meiseros men abayis, that you remove all the Meiseros from the house, ulisvados, and confess, k'dechsiv miksei shalosh shanim totzi. So it's not in 1 year that happens with the Meiser, you have already till 3 years. And so then the Gemara said, the lav bar hartzohu, maybe it's only by Bechor that it's accepted, because it's not, eno bo lechaper, it's not a bar hartzoh, it's not for atonement. Avol Kodshim could go in Ola, but let's say you have a carbon like an Ola, Shemechaper Sal Aseh, that's an atonement for mitzvahs Aseh that are violated. Ushlamim Shemevin Ladoron Litein Shalom Ben Yisrael Avim Shavashamayim, and carbon Shlamim is brought as a gift in order to have peace between Klal Yisrael and their Father in heaven. V'yemahol v'ichru Pasul ba'avodahu v'lo lirtzu. So therefore, one might think that if those are delayed, they wouldn't be accepted. So Kamash Malon, so it's teaching us again, those also are accepted even if they are delayed. But the Gemara continues and asks, Vakati, but still, Mehasam Nafka, do you really need the source from over there? But there's another pasuk that should be the source. The pasuk says, V'haya b'chachet, and this pasuk actually is written by delaying the obligation, when a person has an obligation to bring a carbon from a neder that he took. So the pasuk says, again, Lo sa'acher l'shalmo, seeing the full pasuk over here, Lo sa'acher l'shalmo, don't delay. Kidaro shidrashenu Hashem elokech meimach v'haya b'chachet. It says at the end of the pasuk, V'haya b'chachet, that you will sin, v'lo b'karban chachet, the sin will not be in the carbon will be accepted. Rashi explains, V'lo b'karban chachet shem icharu, that if it's delayed, eino nifsal, it's not disqualified. V'haya b'chachet, sefer dekra, lo sacher l'shalmo, v'haya b'chachet is the end of this pasuk about delaying to fulfill the oath. And the Gemara continues and responds, Ben Azai will respond to that, Tahumi Boile, he uses that pasuk of V'haya b'chachet for something else. He uses it for the following, V'haya b'chachet, that the sin is with you, V'lo be'ishtachachet, but the sin will not be with your wife. She's not going to be punished for this delay. Now, why would one think that the wife would be punished? One might have thought, Hoel v'yamer Rabbi Elazar, since Rabbi Elazar said, V'yitayim Rabbi Yochanan, some say Rabbi Yochanan said, Ein ishto shel adam mesa, that a person's wife does not die, elim kein mevakshem mimenu mammon v'yein lo. The reason why a person's wife might die is because people seek money from him and he doesn't have that money. He doesn't pay his obligations. Shenemar, like it says in the pasuk, Amen l'chol l'shalem lama yikach mishkavcha mitachtecha. That's a pasuk in Mishlei. If you don't have what to pay, if you're not able to pay, so your mishkavcha will be taken from you. That's a reference to the wife. So one might think, if that's true, so this also is a kind of a delay of payment. If a person sins by Baal Ta'achar, by a carbon, also maybe she will die. One might have thought that. So Kamash Malon, so therefore Ben Azai says that's what the pasuk teaches when it says B'chachet, the sin will be with you, it will not be with your wife. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, quoting from the Brisa we had in the previous Amud, Acherim Omrim v'machshava hu nifsal v'yeino nifsal b'shlishi. Again, the Acherim, others say that the pasuk teaches us when it says lo yechashev, that it's b'machshava. We're talking about intention that creates this disqualification. It's not a disqualification because it's actually consumed on the third day. And the Gemara says Rabbi Eliezer, now Rabbi Eliezer, who does not use this as the source for machshava, so lo yechashev ma'avidle, what does he do with lo yechashev? This again is a reference to Rabbi Eliezer in the Brisa on the previous Amud. There were a number of opinions in the Brisa, and the Gemara says, "Mi boy leilach Rabbi Yanai." He'll use lo yechashev for the following teaching of Rabbi Yanai. The Yom Rabbi Yanai, because Rabbi Yanai said, "Minayin lemachshavos shemotzios zumizu." From where do we know that machshavos, that intentions, can take away one from the other? Shenemar, as it says, lo yechashev. It says in the pasuk lo yechashev, this very pasuk, and that means lo ye'orev bo machshavos acheros. Don't mix within other machshavos, other intentions. And Rashi explains, first back on the pasuk of Mishkavcha, the one who lies with you, again, that's Ishto, that was a reference to the person's wife. We'll read one Rashi back as well. Mevakshin mimenu mamono shagazal. It's talking, the pasuk is talking where they're seeking money from him because he stole the money. He owes that money, and again, emein l'chol l'shalom, if you don't have to pay, lama yikach mishkavcha mitachtecha. That's why one might have thought that applies to Baal Ta'achar as well. And Rashi, shemotzios zumizu. Again, it said according to Rabbi Yanai, said, how do we know that machshavos are motzio zumizu? That's going to be learned from lo yechashev, and that's what Rabbi Eliezer is going to do with lo yechashev. What that means is as follows: machsheves psul. Let's say you have another intention, which is a disqualifying intention in the course of bringing the carbon. So motzia miyad pigel. That actually makes it that it's not pigel. In other words, when you have pigel is when the Kohen has a machshava chutz lizmanu, he has an intention that the carbon is going to be consumed outside of the proper time. But if there's also an additional intention, and we'll see more about this later on, if there's an additional intention which is disqualifying, so in such a situation, that actually takes it away from being pigul. It's not going to be considered pigul in such a situation. That's what it means that machshavos motzios zumizu, and that's learned from lo yechashev. And the Gemara continues, V'Rav Mori Masni, and Rav Mori, he teaches as follows. Amar Rabbi Yanai said, Minayin lemechashe bekodshim, a different limud of Rabbi Yanai, a different version of Rabbi Yanai in terms of what he learns from Lo Yechashev. How do we know that somebody who has a wrong intention by kodshim, by karbonos, shehu loka, that he gets malchus? So this is actually a source for malchus, according to Rabbi Yanai. It's not just that it can disqualify the carbon, but the person gets malchus. Talmud lomar Lo Yechashev, it says Lo Yechashev, that's considered a lav. It's a negative commandment that you can get malchus for. Amar le Rav Ashi le Rav Mori, Rav Ashi said to Rav Mori, lav shein bo maisu. What do you mean you get malchus? This is a lav with, it's not a maisa, there's no action here, and you generally, v'chol lav shein bo maisa in lokan olav, generally a lav shein bo maisa, there's no malchus. Here it's a lav that's violated through a person's intention, that's not an action, so why are you getting malchus? Amar le said to him, Rabbi Yehuda, he said to him, this follows the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda happens to hold, Rabbi Yehuda says, lav shein bo maisa lokan olav, that a person does get malchus for lav shein bo maisa, and so this is following the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Zeh klal, this is the rule, kol hashochet v'hamakabel v'hamalech v'hazorek, anybody who slaughters, receives the blood, conveys the blood, or throws the blood, these are the blood avodos, and he does it with intention, lechol davar shadarko lechol, to eat something which normally normally is eaten, or to burn something on the Mizbeach that normally is burned on the Mizbeach, kezayis chutz l'makomo, and again it's a kezayis of it that he's going to do outside of the proper place. So pasul ve'in bo kares, that's a case where that disqualifies the carbon, but there is no kares. Again, machsheves chutz l'makomo does not carry with it kares, it's not classic pigul. But chutz l'zmano, but if the machshava he has is outside of the proper time, so pigul v'chayav and all of kares, then it's considered pigul, and there's even a liability to kares. Uvilvad sheyakriv hamater k'mitzvaso, but as long as he brings the mater, that which permits the carbon properly, meaning the other steps are done properly, and then you have this machsheves chutz l'zmano, so that's when we say it's pigul, and there's a liability to kares. Rashi explains that klal kol hashochid makabel ozeh ozeh. First of all, Rashi says it doesn't have to be you slaughter and receive and convey and throw. It's just one of them. Either any of those steps are done with the wrong machshava. Lechol davar shadarko lechol, to eat something that normally is eaten of a carbon, that's basar, that's the meat of the carbon. Or lahakter davar shadarko lahakter, or to burn something that's normally burned in a carbon, that's the emurin, that's the sacrificial portions. Kiri alfin and le'el, we learned this out earlier. Deshtei achilos mefaglos. There are two different kinds of consumption that a person can have in mind, which create pigul. It can be consumption of the person eating the carbon or of the mizbeach, when you burn the portions on the mizbeach. As long as he has in mind that he's going to do that consumption the next day, meaning outside of the proper time. And whatever it's fit for, a murin generally go on the mizbeach, and the meat is again eaten by the people. So the Mishnah says, but it has to be that the carbon otherwise was brought properly. Rashi explains, Hadam hu amater, the blood is the matter of a carbon. That's what permits a carbon. Kimitzvaso, it means it has to be done properly. Shelo yeh bo psul acher, there shouldn't be any other disqualification. Im yesh bo psul machshava acheres, meaning if there's some other disqualifying intent, yotza midei pigul, then it's not going to be considered pigul. K'di alfin le'el, we learned this earlier. The machshavos motzio zumizu, we just said this earlier, that the wrong intentions can take it away from being pigul. That's what it means. Bilvad sheyakriv hamater kimitzvaso. And the Mishnah now continues and explains, Keitzad, how so? Karav hamatir kimitzvaso, how would you have a situation? Keitzad karav hamatir kimitzvaso, how would you have a situation where the matir is brought properly? It would be as follows. Shachad b'shtiko, let's say he slaughters b'shtiko in silence, meaning he doesn't have any intention. There's no wrong intention. Kibel v'holach v'zarak, but then he receives, or he conveys, or he throws the blood, chutz l'zmano, with the intention outside the proper time. O sheshachad chutz l'zmano, or it could be the other way around. He slaughters with the intention outside the proper time. V'kibel v'holach v'zarak b'shtika, and the rest of the process of the blood avodos, the receiving, the conveying, the throwing, he does in silence. There's no intentions there, no wrong intentions. O sheshachad v'kibel v'holach v'zarak chutz l'zmano, or everything is done chutz l'zmano, slaughters, receives, he conveys, throws the blood, does that chutz l'zmano. Zeu shemakriv hamater k'mitzvah. So that would all be included in a case where the matter was done properly, meaning there was no other disqualifying intention. Keitzad lo karv hamater k'mitzvah. So now what would be an example where the matter was not done properly, meaning there was other intentions that were disqualifying that make it that it's not pigul? That would be as follows. Shachad chutz l'mekomo. Let's say he slaughters chutz l'mekomo with intention outside of the proper place. And kibel v'halach v'zara chutz l'zmano, and then he receives, conveys, throws with the intention outside the proper time. O sheshachad chutz l'zmano. Let's say he slaughters with the intention outside of the proper time. And kibel v'halach v'zara chutz l'mekomo, and then receives, conveys, or throws the blood with intention outside of the proper place. O sheshachad v'kibel v'halach v'zara chutz l'mekomo. Or let's say he slaughters, receives, conveys, throws the blood with intention outside of the proper place. Ha-pesach v'achatas sheshachtan shelo l'shmon. Let's say it's the carbon pesach or carbon chatas, slaughters them not for their own sake. That also is a disqualifying intention. V'kibel v'halach v'zara chutz l'zmano, but then he does the receiving, the conveying, the throwing with intention outside of the proper time. O sheshachad chutz l'zmano, or let's say he slaughters with intention outside the proper time, and kibel v'halach v'zarach shelo l'shmon, and then he receives, he conveys, he throws the blood of the carbon, again shelo l'shmon. Again, and this is talking by a carbon pesach or carbon chatos. O sheshachad v'kibel v'halach v'zarach daman shelo l'shmon, or again he slaughters and receives, and he conveys or he throws the blood, shelo l'shmon. Zeu shelo karav hamater k'mitzvah. So all of these cases are cases where the matir was not brought properly because again there was some other disqualifying intention, and that takes it away from being pigul. And the Mishnah continues, lechol kazayis b'chutz. Let's say he does it with the intention to eat a kazayis outside of the proper place, kazayis l'machar, and a kazayis tomorrow outside of the proper time. kazayis lamachar, kazayis b'chutz. So let's say a kazayis tomorrow, and then a kazayis outside of the proper time, just in the reverse order. Kachatzi zayis b'chutz, kachatzi zayis lamachar. Let's say a half a zayis he's intending on eating outside the proper place, and a half a zayis he's doing tomorrow outside the proper time. Or kachatzi zayis lamachar, kachatzi zayis b'chutz. Again, reverse the order. A half a zayis tomorrow, a half a zayis outside of the proper place. Pasul in all of these cases, it's pasul, it's disqualified. V'yein bo kares, and there is no kares. And the Mishnah continues, Amar Rabbi Yehuda says, Zeh haklal, this is the rule. Kol shemachsheves hazman kodma lemachsheves hamakom, if the wrong intention in terms of time preceded the wrong intention in terms of place, so then actually pigel v'chayavan alav kares. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the order does make a difference. In such a case, since the disqualifying intention of time came first, so it becomes pigel, and there's a liability to kares. V'machsheves hamakom kidma lemachsheves hazman, but if the disqualifying intention about place preceded the disqualifying intention about time, so then pasul ve'en bo kares. Then it is disqualified, the carbon, but there is no kares. But the chachamim say zev v'zev pasul ve'en bo kares. In both cases, the order doesn't matter; it's disqualified, and there is no kares. In such a case, again, since there was another disqualifying intention, there is no kares. Lechol kachatzi zayis lahaktir kachatzi zayis. Let's say it's in order to eat a half a zayis and then to burn a half a zayis. Can you combine those two things? One of the disqualifying intentions about a half a zayis was eating the carbon, and one was with regards to burning the sacrificial portions. So they're kosher. There, the carbon actually is still kosher. Those intentions do not combine. She'ein achil v'aktar mitzdarfen, because eating and burning on the mizbeach, those two kinds of intentions do not combine. And Rashi explains, HaPesach v'achatos sheshachtan shelo lishman, by a carbon Pesach and a carbon chatos, if the shechita was done not for the sake of those karbonos, motzion midei pigel, that machshava also would take it away from being pigel, because that's an additional disqualifying intention. And Rashi notes, avol shar zvachim, when it comes to other karbonos, ein shelo lishman motzion midei pigel. Having a machshava shelo lishman is not going to take it away from pigel, to haksherim hein shelo lishman, because other karbonos, as we said at the beginning of the Masechet, they're kosher even if they are shelo lishman. And then the Mishnah said, lechol kazayis b'chutz, kazayis l'machar. Let's say he has in mind to eat a kazayis outside the proper place and to eat a kazayis l'machar the next day. Rashi says, hainu hach damar. That's actually the same case that we've just been bringing all along. He's having a disqualifying intention in terms of place and in terms of time. Ela dereisha ayri bebeis avodos. But Rashi says the first part of the Mishnah is talking about having these intentions in two different avodos, again, of the blood avodos. V'kan ba'avoda achas, here it could be even within one avoda. Sheshachar al menas lechol kazayis l'machar u kazayis b'chutz. He slaughters it on the condition to eat a kazayis tomorrow and a kazayis outside the proper place. And Rashi notes, ulamad demuki lo begemara l'hanami b'shtei avodos. Now, according to the one who says this line in the Mishnah is also talking about two avodos, so what's the point of bringing the same thing again? Mishum kachatzi zayis nakala. We're just bringing this case because we're then going to talk about a half a zayis, lashmin and the mitzdarf and zemzet, to teach the idea that a half a zayis can combine with another half a zayis. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, then the Mishnah brings Rabbi Yehuda's shita, who says that the precedence of the machshava makes a difference. Akula masis and polig. Rabbi Yehuda is arguing on the whole Mishnah. The lesle machshavas motzia zumizu. He doesn't hold that one disqualifying intention can take away the pigul of the other one. Ela imkein kodam psulo lepigulo, unless the disqualifying one came before the pigul intention, the one that had to do with time. The sulo karinan be hartsoas kosher, because then, if that's what happens, the psul comes first. It's not called hartsoas kosher. It's not called a situation where a kosher carbon would have been accepted in this manner. Uvavoda achas nami polik. He also argues if it happens in one avoda, the islay tfos lashon rishon. He has the same argument there because he says we always go by the first lashon, by the first idea, and so therefore again the precedence is going to make a difference according to Rabbi Yehuda. Lechol kachatzi zayis ul hakder kachatzi zayis. Finally, the Mishnah said if the intention had to do with eating and then also burning half zayis, can you combine those? Ushneim chutz lezmano. The case would be, let's say, both intentions are chutz lezmano, or chutz l'makomo, or both intentions were chutz l'makomo. The point is kosher. The point is the carbon would be totally kosher. She'ein achila v'aktar mitzdarfen leposlo, because the eating and the burning of the carbon cannot combine to disqualify. Tahacha lekashira v'hacha lekashira, because you don't have the minimum shear either in achila or haktara, and you're not able to combine them. And the Gemara says, Amar Ilfa says, Machlokes b'shtei avodas. The whole machlokes in the Mishnah, again between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yehuda, is by two avodas. Avol bi'avoda achas, but when it comes to one avoda, divrei hakol, everybody agrees, irev machshavos have. There is a mixture of machshavos over here. Rabbi Yochanan says, no, af b'avoda achas machlokas. It's even a machlokas when it comes to one avoda, and Rashi already alluded to this idea. Rashi explains here, b'shtei avodos. Ilfa's opinion is the machlokas by two avodos. Dehad tani seifa, when it says at the end of the Mishnah, kezayis lamachar, kezayis bachutz. Again, it said at the end of the Mishnah, let's say he has in mind to eat a kezayis tomorrow, that's outside the proper time, and a kezayis bachutz outside the proper place. The polig Rabbi Yehuda Allah b'shtei avodos. Rabbi Yehuda would argue by two avodos, Mairi Kiresha. So that's talking about just like the beginning of the Mishnah. It's saying, let's say he slaughtered it on the condition to eat. The slaughtering was done on the condition to eat a kazayis tomorrow. And then he did the next step of the avodah, that's two avodos. He received the blood on the condition to eat a kazayis outside of the proper place. Ahohu, the polig Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda would argue on that case, Sharei Hukva bepigel, because there the pigel came first. So Rabbi Yehuda says there the second disqualifying this outside of the proper place would not undo the pigel. V'sulo asa machshavas p'sulo mifkala, and again the machshavas p'sul is not going to undo the machshavas p'sul that comes later is not going to undo the pigel. Avol ba'avoda achas, but the point of ilfa is, let's say it would all be in one avoda. Afil Rabbi Yehuda moda delo hukva bepigel v'machshava mu'reves. Even Rabbi Yehuda would admit that it's not going to be pigel if the machshava is mixed with another disqualifying machshava. Meaning, if it's all within one avoda, so even Rabbi Yehuda is going to agree that in such a situation it will not be pigel. If you have two avodas and the pigel comes first, Rabbi Yehuda says it's pigel. But if it's all one avoda, so then it will not be pigel. That's what Ilfa says. Rabbi Yochanan says no. Af b'avoda achas machlokas. The machlokas is even by one avoda. The Islay Rabbi Yehuda tfos lashon rishon, because if the first machshava within that avoda was pigel, and then the second avoda was another disqualifying intention, so the first one was pigel, and therefore it will in fact be pigel according to Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda will argue even by avoda achas. And the Gemara continues, Bishlama Ilfa. Now, it makes sense according to Ilfa, who says that the machlokes is only by shtei avodos, but not by avoda achas. Midereisha b'shtei avodos, because we'll say as follows, since the beginning of the Mishnah is talking about two avodos. So seifanami b'shtei avodos, the end of the Mishnah again refers to what Rashi mentioned, where the case is kezayis lamachar, kezayis bachutz. There was a question over there, is that talking about kezayis lamachar, kezayis bachutz, is that two avodos or one avoda? So it would make sense to say seifanami b'shtei avodos, in that case also is two avodos, and therefore again Rabbi Yehuda is specifically arguing by two avodos, but he would not argue by avoda achas. Elul Rabbi Yochanan, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, Reisha b'shtei avodos, the beginning of the Mishnah is talking about two avodos, v'seifa b'avoda achas, and then you're going to say that the end of the Mishnah is talking about one avoda. And Rashi explains, Midereisha b'shtei avodos, the Katani behedya. In the beginning of the Mishnah it says explicitly, Keitzad haso, lo karav hamatrika mitzvaso. What's a case of lo karav hamatrika mitzvaso? Shachad chutz l'zmano, v'kiva v'hala chutz l'makomo. Clearly talking about different avodos. So seifanami, kezayis l'machar, kezayis b'chutz. The case where we talk about a kezayis, the pligi bar Rabbi Yehuda v'Rabbanan, where the Rabbi Yehuda and the Rabbanan argue, b'shtei avodos, then also is kamairi. That's also talking about two avodos. V'hai dehadar nokidle. Now why would we repeat the same thing? Lashminan, that's just to teach us. Tziruf kechatzi zayis is trying to teach us the idea of combining the half zaysim to lo ashmin and bereisha, which we don't have in the beginning of the Mishnah. But again, the question is, according to Rabbi Yochanan, you're going to say the beginning is two avodos, and then the Mishnah turns to one avoda, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Amud Aleph.